Welcome to another episode of RoD. We have another repeat guest for you today. Check out episode 141 for the previous time that this gentleman graced our airways and our ears. He is a fifth degree black belt. He is an ex-UFC star. He is the owner and head coach at King's Academy in Sydney. And we are really looking forward to chatting once again with Elvis Sinosic. Thanks for joining us, Elvis.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. As I was like to start, it's good to be the king. Looking forward to the chat. It's been a long time. Hopefully, there's a few new things that we can discuss since last time.
I actually listened to the previous episode today, Elvis, and the names that you fought against, and then the competitions that you were in. It really is astounding, and you were there for UFC 30, right? Like that was your first foray into UFC 30. My question just off the top, mate, is do you still watch it? Like, are you kind of still involved in, like, let's just say, like, UFC? Like, do you get invites to UFC things? You know, like, were you at UFC 300? Does anything like that still happen for you, mate?
Look, obviously running King's Academy of Martial Arts, I'm involved in the sport daily. I've got students competing in MMA, Jiu-Jitsu. I just had one of my students on the weekend defend his state Muay Thai title. You know, we do wrestling, grappling, pretty much everything here. So yes, in that regard, I'm involved. I still like to watch the UFCs every now and then. I don't get to watch it to the same extent that I used to back in the day, particularly when I was working at Fox Sports. I could tell the wife, but it's for work. So, you know, I got to pretty much watch all the fight shows and pay-per-views. Nowadays, I'll kind of hang out more like the big cards, or as it is with kids. I will tend to wait until later on in the evening and watch a replay. So I try and stay off social media. I've got young kids, so the time the show is on is Sunday in the middle of the day. And Sunday is pretty much the only day I have for my family. I am also very thankful the UFC still value myself and everything that I've done for the sport. And I hate to say this, but I just missed the first show in Australia. I've been to every single pay-per-view and fight night in Australia since they've come here. Thanks to you, they've always given me tickets, great seats, looked after me. But this one was just bad timing. I had other stuff on, and I was pulling my hair out. I'm like, I can't I don't want to miss it. And I missed it. So hopefully the next Sydney one I'll make up.
That's amazing, eh? We have relationships in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Like, we'll compete against somebody and then you walk off the mats and you grab their Instagram and you message and you talk shit and you laugh and you congratulate them every time they get a stripe or a new belt or whatever, you know, people you compete against. Do you still have contact with people from the UFC that you've fought against, or from any of the other, you know, sort of bigger cards that you were on? Like, do you still have relationships with those guys now?
Most of those honestly have fallen off. I mean, it's been, I was supposed to compete in UFC 110, which was 2010, 15 years ago. So, you know, back then I was still, you know, staying in touch with some of the guys, particularly when I go overseas and things like that. Nowadays, I still, when I go to the event, I will see some of the people I know, and we still kind of have that friendship and relationship. It's just not a regular thing, obviously, because we are so far removed from the rest of the world, and particularly the US. If I'm not heading over there, they're not usually getting out here very often. But you know, if I see like Bruce Buffer, he'll still come up to me and say hi. We'll get our obligatory fan photo, and the good thing is I'm generally with the other fighters. So even the new generation guys, I'll tell them who I am, and they'll get a photo with me and things like that. So it's still very respectful. But yeah, nowadays most of my regular communications and contacts and friends are more local based. Obviously, my students, my family, friends, those sort of people.
It's been, about 3.5 years since we last spoke with you. Elvis. So there's been a lot of change in the around how the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu scene has changed in Australia in that time.
Yes, was there a question in that? Look, the biggest change obviously has been the growth of the no-gi element of the sport. It's become a lot more prevalent. A lot more people wanting to, participate in no-gi, learn leg lock, go into the latest stuff. The gi is still very strong. It's still very popular. Um, One of the things I really try and tell my no-gi guys is don't lose touch with it, because when you get older, obviously you're not as athletic, you tend to carry some injuries, and you want a longevity in the sport. One of the beauties of the gi is that allows you, with all your handles, is to slow down the game and focus on skills. And even though there's still a very much at the world class level, a very athletic element, in your daily training, it can slow it down. Whereas the no gi, not unlike wrestling, tends to be a little bit faster paced, a little bit more high intensity. So I tell the guys, make sure, yes, you're doing no gi and focus on it. That can be your primary thing for now, but don't lose touch with the gi, because what happens is when you do want to go back to the gi, if you haven't been dealing with the grips consistently in the slightly different game, all of a sudden you feel like you're 2 or 3 belt levels lower than you should be, because you haven't kept up and that skill set, and then you're forced to adapt, and then it can be pretty frustrating, and it can force some people to drop out. We always try and stay on top of what's happening out there. We have a look at, whether it's, in the gi, or whether it's the no gi, the leg entanglement. Literally just 5 minutes ago with one of my coaches playing around with the trend lock, which is very popular at the moment. So we're having a look at different ways to set it up, how would we defend it, just trying to understand it. And it's interesting you bring it up, because that's the way it came up, is how do I stay motivated to keep going and stuff. And it's that thrill of learning, of that thrill of breaking down moves, try and understand stuff, because the sport is always evolving. And that's what allows you to kind of keep going and stay engaged. Whereas a lot of sports, things like basketball, tennis, football, soccer, you can stay involved, but they're very much up to a certain point. Once you've developed most of your skills, the sport doesn't change much. And because it doesn't change much, you are more physically challenged than you are mentally challenged. The beauty of jiu-jitsu is that you will continue to be mentally challenged as well as physically challenged. So it keeps things fresh, and it allows you to push forward and keep learning, and it keeps you engaged for a much longer time. And it's something you can keep going and doing until you're way older. Because even if I'm not rolling at a high level against guys, I can still sit down with them, break down stuff, engage myself, being engaged with them. So look, the sport has changed. So back to the original question, the sport has changed, it's evolved. There's different things happening, but that's one of the beauties that I find that allows to keep me engaged, the students engaged, gives them different options, and it just keeps it enjoyable.
So what would a week look like for you, Elvis? So obviously you've got a whole range of, coaching that you do, but your personal training, like how does that, like, do you kind of do a Muay Thai session? Do you do a wrestling session? Do you do 4 jiu-jitsu sessions? Like, what does a week look like for you in training?
Look, most of the time, my training is just being on the mat, teaching, playing around with the students. As I said, after classes, sitting down with some of the coaches or other students, looking at different ideas, working on different techniques. It's more nowadays more playful, more about being mentally engaged. I do have a couple of injuries which I'm kind of rehabbing at the moment, so it limits my ability to have intense sessions. but it doesn't prevent me from having those more engaging mental, technical sessions where I can really enjoy the challenge mentally to be able to get the most out of it.
And what about strength and conditioning? Are you doing much of that?
Well, pretty much mostly just around the rehab. So if you go back to the previous podcast, and I'm sure you're aware of UFC 110, I was supposed to compete. My shoulder kind of had underlying injuries, which kind of came to a head at the event. The intense 6-week training camp pretty much blew it out. I ended up having to have surgery. I ended up having surgery on my shoulder. Post surgery, my bicep tendon, the minor bicep tendon popped, and so I've kind of been dealing with that ever since. Now, at the time of my surgery, my doctor said, "Look, you're probably going to need a new surgery in about 10 years to kind of fix it up and clean it up," which was about 4 years ago. Because what happened is I had children. I got young kids. For me to be able to have the surgery, I would most likely be in a brace for at least 3 to 6 months. And with young kids, I want to be able to be hands-on with my kids, pick them up, throw them around, play with them. Having my shoulder in a brace just isn't practical. So I've kind of had to focus most of my strength and conditioning on working on the shoulder. Honestly, a lot of my condition is chasing the kids, jumping on the trampoline. They won't let me sit down for a second on the weekend. And then, as I said, being on the mat. Even when I'm not teaching, I'm watching classes, I'm paying attention. We just got 2 Thai coaches in. We have set up accommodation for them. So they take a bit of the workload. I'm also always, if needed, having a couple of classes, a boxing class, a wrestling class, a jiu-jitsu class. I'm still in the MMA class, still working with one of my other coaches. So yeah, I'm always still kind of engaged and doing things. But as I said, most of the strength and conditioning nowadays is focused on the rehab. We're working on a third child at the moment. Once that's back on track, then I'm going to put a little bit more focus onto my own personal rehab, and then building that strength back up so I can be a little bit more competitive on the mat.
Tell us a little bit about King's Academy, mate. Like, you kind of mentioned it in the first podcast that we did, but tell us about it. Like, what, locations and classes and the sort of setup of the gym.
So I'll jump back a step. I used to have a business called Sinosic Martial Arts. We first started teaching in a school hall around 2000. Church hall back in 2001. We took over from a coach that was running it there. He was moving to Melbourne. He didn't move to Melbourne. He was meant to go down just for a short time. He moved down there and we were supposed to just cover classes. And then he's like, "Oh, I know we're going to cover it for a month. Can you cover it for 3 months?" And then a week later, it's like, "Oh, can you cover it for a year?" And then it's like, "You know what? Just keep it on staying in Melbourne." So we ended up taking that over. Really enjoyed the teaching and being involved. And at that time, I was obviously still fighting in the UFC. So we decided to open up a full-time gym, which became SPMA, Sinosic Martial Arts. We were one of the first full-time MMA gyms in Sydney and Australia, where we had, striking and grappling classes. It was still relatively limited, but we had the striking, grappling, and then the MMA component. And we kept that up for so 2002, we opened up our first full-time place, and then we kind of kept consistent. Around 2016, me and my business partner kind of had different ideas, and we both wanted to kind of set up our own legacy. So we ended up splitting the assets, taking over. We happened to have 2 locations. We took over one each. I rebranded to King's Academy because obviously Elvis, Sinosic, the King of Rock and Rumble, was my fight name. So I kind of wanted to leverage off that. My fight colors were the royal colors, black and gold. So, I made the gym black and gold. One of the few gyms, we've got black and yellow mats, yellow on the walls. So to really keep that feeling like that consistency throughout the whole gym. And I wanted to make something that was truly unique at the time, that really didn't exist, that had everything under one roof. But unlike before, so previously we did most of the coaching. Even we, had wrestling classes, judo classes. We would occasionally get a coach in to teach, but then we would take over and we'd be doing all the different kind of classes. Whereas I wanted to get specialists in, so I ended up getting like a boxing coach, a wrestling coach. Um, uh, I had students who I'd graded and trained in Thailand, so we had guys coming to Muay Thai, and obviously myself and my students doing the Jiu-Jitsu. So we created a center which had a large mat space that allowed us to have, as I mentioned, the jiu-jitsu classes, the Muay Thai classes, the boxing classes, the wrestling classes, MMA specific classes, bags, ring, cage, strength and conditioning area. So we've got a small gym with your, a couple of power racks, benches, dumbbells, barbells, kettlebells, assault bikes, free runners, spin bikes, everything you kind of need to complement it. But one of the things I realized also while I realized after fighting, I wasn't as good as it while I was during it. Even though I did rehab, I didn't appreciate the value of rehab and recovery as a regular addition to your training. Obviously, post my fight career, I realized the value that goes behind those. So what I also included in the gym is we have a sauna, we run hot yoga classes. In summer, we have an area, we run ice baths, and I also purchased a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, which sadly at the moment is out of commission. The zipper burst, so I'm looking at getting that repaired hopefully soon. But the goal was to have everything anyone needed under one roof. Your training, the training that complements your skills training, and then the recovery that goes with it. Because I think a lot of places focus so much on the training, they do forget about the other element, which will give you longevity in your career and post-career as well.
I love that, Elvis, because well, I'm a 50 now. Since we last spoke, I'm 3 years older. It's already, and I'm really finding as I'm getting older, the recovery side of things is almost more than the training. So
Of course,
yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts around sort of recovery, and you've mentioned about longevity and stuff because it is hard in your 50s being on the mats and trying to keep up with people half your age or whatever. What sort of advice do you have around the recovery?
So first of all, to ensure you have get the most out of your training, you need to have a good diet. Now, I'm a proponent of like keto style carnivore diet. I think they're very beneficial. They remove inflammation. But even if you don't want to go fully down that route, you want to focus on whole foods, natural foods, plants and animals that appear in nature in the same form. The problem with is a lot of the foods we get today are highly processed. People push a lot of grains, which can be highly inflammatory. Same with the processed foods, lots of sugars. You want to reduce your sugar intake, even excessive carbohydrate. Even if you don't go low carb keto, you still want to bring it down so you're reducing the amount of inflammation. You want to have foods that provide longer term energy because, again, glucose and carbohydrates can provide short-term energy, but they don't keep you going for the longer session. Whereas having a higher fat diet gives you a more sustained fuel source to keep training. It makes recovery easier. Again, one of the bigger problems with older people is they're not getting enough protein, and protein is essential to maintain muscle, bone density, general health. So you need to make sure you're eating sufficient. Now, even though this is technically processed, if you're not getting your protein needs met, I do recommend something like whey protein to add to a healthy diet because, again, one of the biggest problems that you see with older people, osteoporosis, broken hips, things like that, is a result of insufficient protein, which causes loss of bone density, which will then reduce your ability to kind of keep going. I also do promote healthy movement. So there are certain things I like to do, making sure stretching out your back. I'm a big proponent of what's called the child squat or the Asian squat, where you're sitting flat on your heels, ass to heel, and being able to hold the position for extended periods, because research has shown that if you can maintain your full range of movement, it will improve life quality. So people talk about extending the lifespan, but we should be looking at improving life quality. So it shouldn't just be about living longer, but living better as well. So obviously, have doing plenty of stretching before and after classes, especially if you're older, having a good diet. And then, as I said, doing the recovery. So not everyone can do, lots of recovery, but I usually recommend that after training, if you have 5-10 minutes, jump into the sauna. The heat will improve blood flow, which will bring blood and oxygen to your muscles and areas that need it. Jump into the shower, wash down, finish with a cold shower. I don't recommend daily ice baths because it will reduce too much inflammation. If you have an ice bath every day, now what people tend to forget is what promotes growth is the injury that's being sustained. So when you tear muscle fibers, your body responds, inflammation occurs in the area, sends blood flow to there, which creates repair, which creates growth. And if at the end of every session, you're getting rid of all that inflammation with an ice bath, the body's like, okay, no signals for repair. So you're actually more likely to sustain injuries further down because you're not recovering, repairing, and growing properly. So during the week, I suggest sauna, warm, hot shower, finish with a cold rush. I'm a big proponent of hot and cold exposure. And then at the end of the week, if you're really feeling sore and you want to reduce that inflammation on your last day of training, so here would be a Saturday afternoon, you jump into an ice bath, you sit in it, if you can make 5-10 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever works for you, get that inflammation down, have your Sunday as your day of rest, unless you have children, then you're in big trouble. Let your body recover and then start fresh on the Monday. Now, there are other things that I suggest, but I understand people can't do regularly. Make sure if you have injuries, see a doctor, see a physio, make sure they're being looked at. You have the opportunity, go get a massage, I'm also use other things like I have red light at my home. For those who are not familiar with near and red and near infrared light, I use that to kind of complement it as well. And for me, it's lucky I've got one mounted in my bedroom, and I throw it on. The kids love it. They think the red light is funny, so we turn the light off, put the red light on. They jump up and down on the bed. I get to do a little bit of red light recovery, and they're having fun as well, being exposed to it. So yeah, there are a few steps to kind of summarize. Good diet, whole foods. Make sure you're stretching before and after sessions. Make sure you're participating in some sort of recovery with hot and cold exposure. Making sure you're having rest time and look after your injury.
And then the one you probably didn't touch on, mate, because you got young kids, is sleep. How do you go with that?
Sorry, what's that? Look,
it's a myth.
I do think sleep's important. I'm very lucky. I've got a very supportive wife. It is difficult because our youngest at the moment is sleeping, co-sleeping with us. Again, I didn't mention this, but this is one of the things I think is very important, is that social aspect. Obviously, socializing with your family, socializing with your friends, maintaining contact. I think social is equally as important as a lot of other things to maintain a healthy mind and life, because those social connections. I'm lucky because I'm at the gym. I'm having regular social connections. I'm meeting new people constantly. I've got regular students, who I socialize with. I'll be taking my staff out for their Christmas dinner sometime in December. We have things like our Christmas party. We have in-house comps. We do things, so we're socializing. But yeah, so with sleep, the wife usually, because my day shifts, so I'm not usually home till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. The wife will usually stay up, wait for me. We'll sit and watch a little bit of TV. She'll go to bed. I'll wind down a little bit. Sometimes I'll jump on the laptop. That's when I'll do my admin because I'm still awake. I'm not tired, so I use the time to try and get some work done. I'll then go to sleep, and then in the mornings I'll get woken up by our daughter. Um, and then once the wife is ready, she'll jump out of bed, take the daughter with her. She'll let me go back to sleep, and then a bit later in the morning, so not too early. I'll slowly get up unless the kids have managed to unlock the door and come in and start grabbing me and go, "Daddy, come on, let's go, Daddy." She grabs my dressing gown, gives it to me, goes, "You got to get up. We have to go downstairs because downstairs is our playtime." So she tries to drag me out of the room. I'm like the old zombie, but yeah, it's good. Like I managed to get what I feel is sufficient sleep for myself. It may not be a contiguous amount of sleep, but usually I'll roughly hit that 7 hours each night. Sometimes I'll be lucky and I'll get 8 hours or something. Some weekend, the wife will let me sleep in a bit longer. I might even get 9 hours. Most of the time, not, because I like to get up and see the kids. At the moment, my schedule allows me to spend time and see the kids in the morning. They do go to daycare and a preschool, but it's kind of on different days. So most days, one of the kids is home, except for Friday, which both of they are. So I get to spend time at least with one of the kids every day in the morning. I'll head off to work for a couple of hours, do my admin, and then I go back home in the afternoon, pick up whoever's at school or daycare, bring them home, spend about an hour or so with the kids before I then head back for the evening, and then I'm here all night and I get home. So yeah, look, I do think sleep is very important. Obviously, I'm at a different point in my life, so I don't have to really have the same quality of sleep that I would have needed if I was training at a high level, competing. Obviously, that's a bit different. You must have that sleep to get the recovery, but I'm not pushing my body to those extremes. So I don't need to, if I sleep 6 hours or 5 hours one night, yeah, I'll be a little bit yawny during the day, but I'll be fine because I know I'll make it up over the next couple of days. But again, for the athletes, it's a little bit different. You need to prioritize your sleep quality. Mine's about balancing family life and sleep.
Another thing you talked about in our last episode, Elvis, was that you were heading into politics. You were heading to there was an upcoming election. Can you tell us a bit about?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I kind of got into politics. COVID kind of made me realize a lot of things. I'll refresh just in case people haven't listened to that previous podcast. So going into COVID, I was like everyone else. I'm like, oh, the government's saying this. Um, it's very dangerous. We need to do all these things. And I kind of went, okay, I'm going to listen and do what they say. Um, but at the time, I was also very vested in nutrition because, as I mentioned, I think it's very important. I was on that journey where I started with fasting, daily fast, going to intermittent fast. And I should have mentioned that as well. I think fasting is very extremely beneficial. I still do intermittent fasting, which realistically is time restricted eating, but I'm not going to get into that argument. I do daily fast, which led me then to low carb, to keto, to carnivore, and but I was on that journey of um, really trying to tune in into good nutrition to improve my longevity, not just lifespan, but life quality, and be able to pass that on to my students so they can keep training. So I was listening to a lot of podcasts, looking at a lot of studies, reading a lot of blogs and articles and things like that. So when COVID came out, the people that I was listening to about nutrition um, were also talking about it. So they were talking about all the things that you needed to do: exercise, sun exposure, eating healthy foods, keep moving, get outdoors. And these are what you would call health advice. It's telling you how to be healthier. And the disconnect I found is our media and government were not talking about health advice. They were saying you have to stay home. You can't go outdoors. You can't socialize. You're limited to 1 hour of exercise a day, and then, people getting stuck on couches, watching TV, Netflix and chill with, a packet of chips and things. And I'm like, well, that's only going to make things worse because you're not focusing on your health. And I'd already noticed that disconnect between real nutrition and health with government guidelines, which were, the food pyramid, which became my plate. And I looked into the history of it and how certain industries influence what the recommendations were rather than what the health outcomes were. That's why we have so many grains recommended, whereas grains are not a prevalent part of our historical nutrition plan. And grains, to be used properly, generally have to be highly processed, stripped of their nutrients, and so they have to add nutrients back in. So you'll see a lot of foods that say fortified. What that means is they've stripped all the nutrients out, so they've now had to put them back in, but they never put the same form in. They end up putting synthetic versions of it. And again, it just leads to that, what we were talking about earlier, highly processed foods lead to inflammation. So I'd already discovered that disconnect, was noticing the disconnect between health advice and what the government was giving. The government was not giving health advice. It was literally anti-health. And then when it came to how to treat it, they were talking about pharmaceuticals rather than improving health, vitamin D, vitamin C, sun exposure, all these things. When they shut down businesses, fitness centers were the first to be shut down and the last to open, and it just didn't make sense. And then obviously that kind of steamrolled where it reached the point where, the lockdown, vaccine passports, people getting locked up in their homes, not allowed to participate in society. And from a health perspective, none of it made sense. So obviously I felt the government was overreaching, shutting down businesses when I don't think they should have been doing that, not giving health advice, restricting people from healthy activity. So I decided to get involved in politics. I ran in my first election in 2022, was unsuccessful, but it was a good experience. Since then, I've joined the Libertarian Party. I participated in now 3 elections with them. Four elections. No, 3 elections. 1 state, 1 local, and the most recent federal election. We're actually at the moment now preparing for the 2027 election. The parties realise that we can't wait till the election cycle starts. We need to start campaigning now. So they're running what's called a plebiscite for our lead MLC, which is a member for the Legislative Council. For those who are not aware, both state and federal parliament have an upper and a lower house. So the lower house is what we call electorates. They're representatives of a certain area. The upper house is the Legislative Council in state, the Senate in the federal, and they are what's referred to as proportional representation for the whole state. So I am running for the lead MLC candidate for the upcoming 2027. So not this weekend, but the following weekend, the members will be voting on who they want to be representing the party. And obviously I've put myself forward. I think I have a strong voice that can reach not just people in the party, but people outside, obviously through my MMA and UFC, jiu-jitsu experience. I think there are a lot of people out in the community who think the same way I do, but are not finding the representatives that represent how they feel, what their values are, and the way that they think we should be moving forward. So, yeah, staying actively engaged. Again, it takes a lot of time because obviously I'm trying to raise a family, I'm trying to run my business, and I'm also staying actively engaged in the party, actively engaged on social media and talking to people, trying to see what they think is important, what they want to see represented in Parliament. It's definitely been an adventure. As I mentioned earlier, I do tend to be a little bit obsessive compulsive. I find that if I have something that mentally challenges me, it drives me to keep forward. In the same way that new techniques and jiu-jitsu is evolving, it keeps me engaged. Politics is doing the same thing. I'm learning new things. I'm starting to understand a lot more about what's going on, particularly the financial side of it, things with our GDP per person, how the government is using immigration to artificially elevate our GDP while we're seeing our GDP per person going down, which means our GDP is growing, but each person's share is getting smaller. So little ideas like that, understanding how the economy works, understanding how inflation is caused by government overspending and printing more money. The government tries to blame the consumer for overspending, but the reality is government spending and money printing and the government borrowing money, which increases our national debt, which is the real driver behind inflation. Yes, consumer spending will play a part, but I don't believe it's anywhere near the part that they believe it is. They want us to believe that we're responsible for the inflation when that's just not the case. And the government does things like artificially bringing down, like the energy rebate we've received over the past year or 2 years that we've had. What that does is it artificially lowers the price of energy. The cost of energy doesn't change, but what we're paying goes down. So it creates a false idea of what money is going into the economy, and then they can say, oh, look, spending's down, therefore we can lower the inflation. As soon as those artificial subsidies are removed, inflation goes up. What's happening right now, they've removed those energy rebates, inflation is going up. Again, demonstrating that it's related to government spending and what they're doing with the economy. So back to the original point. Yes, I'm still involved.
Yes, I'm still involved.
The party is, I think the Libertarian Party is the right way forward. I think that at this stage is the only minor party that really have a democratic process where the members can be involved in electing executives, state executives, federal executives, electing lead candidates. So the members themselves have a say in the party, similar to what the major parties are doing. The difference is at this stage there is not external factors influencing how the members vote, whereas in parties like the Labor Party, they're highly influenced by unions, the Liberal Party highly influenced by lobbyists, both parties are highly influenced by factions, and that's why you're seeing these major parties drift away from their traditional values. You go back 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the Labor Party was supposed to be the party for the worker. The Liberal Party was supposed to be the party for small businesses. But they no longer represent that. Like, sadly, both parties now tend to more represent global influence in different ways. It's almost like they're going to the same point, but from different directions. Whereas I believe the Libertarian Party wants to bring back individual autonomy, more rights for the individual, lowering taxes, which is done by reducing government spending, and by reducing spending, trying to bring our debt into surplus, truly into not a false surplus, but bringing it back under control, so we can bring inflation back down. Sorry, I'm going to diverging. And again, this is one of the things people forget is our inflation goes up, and when inflation goes down, that doesn't mean prices go down. All it means is, so we've got inflation that builds. So this quarter it's this much, this quarter it's this, but it's constantly building on itself. So even though inflation is lower, if you actually look at the trend over the past, 5 years, the amount it's actually increased is something like 20%, because each inflation, even though the inflation rate has gone up and down, so at any one point, maybe it's only 3.5%, or 2.5%, or 3%. It's built up on top of the previous inflation. And so even though inflation comes down, prices don't. And most modern economists on the Keynesian philosophy don't want to see negative inflation. They think it's bad. But the truth is, negative inflation will bring the price down, because it will increase the value of the fiat currency. And again, that's one of the reasons they're so against currency like Bitcoin, which has been treated like an asset rather than a currency. Even though gold and silver is very valuable, we trade in it, we can only store it. Again, digress.
To stop you there, sorry. Nearly out of time.
Sorry about that.
It's great. It's really good to have someone so passionate, and someone from as ourselves, to go out there and represent on a government level. We just thank you so much for giving up your time. We've just got a couple of pop quiz questions here that we ask at the end. So let's fire away.
Fire off quickly.
All right, mate. I'll give you a few and we'll see how we go. All right. iPhone or Samsung?
I'm a Samsung. I've got the Fold. I think it's brilliant. I want the newest Fold. It's even better. My wife has it. So I don't know. But Samsung, go.
Beautiful. Strength or flexibility? What do you prefer?
Even though I'm extremely flexible is not effective without strength behind it. So I'm going to have to say strength first.
I like that. In jiu-jitsu, guard pull or takedown?
If you're competing, takedown. If you're doing it for longevity, guard.
That's a good answer. Steak or chicken?
100% steak. Carnivore. Ribeye is the gold standard.
Yeah, I love ribeye, mate. I'm the same. Preference at the moment, gi or no gi?
Honestly, it swings. At the moment, probably no gi, simply because at this point in time, it's evolving a little faster than the gi is. So it's keeping me more actively engaged. A few years ago, when we were doing things like berimbolos, wedging back take, even though that's now transferred to no gi, it kind of developed in the gi side. It was keeping me more engaged with something different. Now it's obviously the leg entanglement. The latest thing, other than leg entanglement, is wrestling up. So one of the advantages we have is having the wrestling program, so we can use that to complement our jiu-jitsu. So the quick answer, no gi.
What's your favorite belt that you've been at, Elvis?
Tough one. Look, probably the favorite belt is the worst belt, which is the purple belt. It's the hardest belt to get on. It's the hardest belt to get off. It's the most challenging for that reason. So the way I look at it is a purple belt, a brown belt, and a black belt are all very similar. The difference is mat time. So I think purple belt is where that real change, where you've developed your game, you're now implementing, you're evolving your game, you're creating. All that brown and black belt do is evolve it further and build on it. My other answer is black belt, simply because I love teaching so much, and the black belt has allowed me to really focus on teaching and expanding my knowledge.
Yeah, mate, we get a lot of people say purple belt. It's probably it would definitely be the most sort of named belt. So that's pretty cool. All right, mate, I've got two more for you. These will be quick ones, I would say. Can you drive a manual car?
Yeah, right there. Yeah, of course. I got a 80 series Land Cruiser manual diesel. It's the way to go.
Legend. And then the last one, do you wear Crocs?
Gold ones.
Oh, no, Kim, we can't release it. We can't put it out.
I'll be honest, I started with toe shoes, and the wife couldn't stand my toe shoes, so she got me Crocs. She found it was a fair compromise.
Yeah.
It's an upgrade.
No. We'll have this episode out in a couple of weeks, Elvis. Thank you again for giving up your time.
No problem.
My
pleasure. Thanks for having me on Roll or Die. As usual, it's good to be the king, and I'm sure in a couple of years we can do another one.
The king of rock and rumble, you heard it here. Thank you, Elvis. We really appreciate you coming on. To everybody, please remember to like, rate, share, subscribe to whatever podcast you listen to on whatever platform, and then jump on like another one, whatever. Find another podcast and jump on that and subscribe on that one too. All of those things will help us out. We will see you all on the next episode of Roll or Die. Peace.
And we're out.